The topspin backhand has become a weapon in the modern game. It can be used to hit a heavy topspin, causing it to rear up high on the opponent during the rally, to increase power with consistency during a rally, to disguise a topspin lob, to pass the opponent who is attacking the net by either power passing shots down the line or excessive cross-court angles created by the topspin. Because tennis tournaments are now being played on clay and hard-court synthetic surfaces, the topspin backhand should be an integral part of a tennis player's arsenal of weapons. Like a number of aspects of the modern game, the topspin backhand is quite different to the typical Eastern grip brushed backhand. There are 3 grips which can be used to hit the topspin backhand. The most important concept to understand is that the racket face is vertical on impact and the swing trajectory is basically that of an extended U. Also keep in mind that the modern tennis players will generally change their backhand grips relative to the height of the ball and the types of shots they wish to hit. A vertical racket face on impact is the key to understanding the topspin backhand. Firstly, the continental grip. Lendl is an exponent of this grip in hitting a topspin backhand. However, to have the racket face vertical on impact and follow the recommended swing pattern, the wrist must lead the racket. Secondly, the Eastern grip. The Eastern grip is used because the racket face is vertical on impact. And finally, the wrist behind the handle grip. With the wrist behind the handle, the racket face will be vertical to the ground. As well, there is a firmer grip on the racket. Advantages of having the wrist behind the grip include being able to hit a ball chest high or above, hit the ball on the rise, and hit a ball bouncing at the normal height. Disadvantages include lack of variety, long way to move the grip for the forehand,
possible return of serve problems. The unit turn, in which the shoulders and the hand and racket move as one unit as the ball approaches, is used from the ready position. The non-racket hand controls the racket head. In reaching the final stage of the backswing, there are 2 methods in which the racket hand is lifted to approximately shoulder height, with the racket being head height or above. The first method is to turn the shoulder, take the hand backwards, and then lift into position, similar to a half U. The second method requires turning the shoulder and immediately lifting the hand into the position to have a loop in the backswing. The basic forward swing trajectory results when the player steps with the right foot towards the ball and the racket drops down below the height of the oncoming ball and below the wrist. The bent knees assist the racket head to come from below the ball without the need to drop the racket head excessively. Just prior to impact, the racket trajectory increases sharply, which imparts forward rotation of the ball, that is, topspin. The hip is extended, raising the hitting shoulder, which aids the upward swing pattern of the racket. At impact, the ball is hit in front of the front foot. The racket face is vertical, and the racket will be parallel to the ground. A dropped racket head on impact will weaken the grip because of the anatomy of the wrist. Note also that the elbow joint is extended, thus increasing velocity, so that the arm is almost straight on impact. As well, the upper arm is at a comfortable distance from the body on impact. Studies by Groppel and Elliott have shown that balls are hit off-centre, which results in racket twisting. Thus, there is a need for a firm grip on impact. The racket has already moved sharply upwards prior to impact. It is important for the player to keep their head, and thus their body, still during and immediately after impact. Note that the racket continues to stay on the left of the hitting hand as the racket continues on its upward path. Alternatively, the racket can swing up and across the body. The follow-through finishes with the racket well in front of the body, whilst the racket head finishes above the wrist. The body and racket need to decelerate slowly so as to prevent injury.
In most cases, this can be done by the back foot coming round after the initial parts of the follow-through. High bouncing balls can also be hit with heavy topspin. Although the swing is similar to the normal topspin backhand drive previously described, the follow-through is somewhat different because it is difficult to keep the trunk still during the swing. The ball is hit from below in a similar fashion, but the racket swings upward and across the ball, and hence the body, requiring the upper trunk to rotate. The topspin backhand drive requires forward transfer by stepping forward towards the ball and efficient trunk rotation. Just before stepping forward towards the ball and thus swinging, the hips and trunk rotate backwards. Thus, as the front foot steps into position, the hips and trunk explode, bringing the racket on path to the ball. The front shoulder stays firmly in position whilst the racket continues on its path to the ball from below. The hip extends, lifting the hitting shoulder, and just prior to impact, the racket moves sharply upwards. At all times, the racket head is accelerating. The body stays in position as the weight is transferred, and the racket path goes out through the ball. Power is generated from the shoulder turn, footwork, hips and trunk, and not just by swinging the racket quickly.
Ivan moves across to the ball beautifully and leads out with his right leg. He has a continental grip, and notice how the wrist leads the racket head through. Keep your eye on the racket face as it comes through vertically. From this angle, you can see Pete's backswing and forward swing. Note how he moves across and leads out with his right leg. His head remains still right through the hit. And on finish, the back foot, the left leg, comes around. As Yannick moves towards the ball, you will notice him changing his grip by using his left hand. He steps with his right leg towards the ball, and notice the racket face as it comes onto impact with the ball and then follows through. Darren leads out with his right foot and stays well down for the low ball. Notice how his head stays still right throughout the stroke. This is also a good angle for observing his continental grip and watching the racket face as it comes through onto impact with the ball and then rises sharply.
Gabriella uses a left hand to get a grip so that her wrist is behind the racket. Behind her back, you'll notice how she raises the racket head to get extra power, steps with the right leg, and then one of her characteristics is quite a large body rotation.
There are 4 points to observe with Stefan's backhand. Watch the large shoulder rotation leading to a high back lift. The beautiful step towards the ball. How the head remains still right throughout the hit. And finally, keep your eye on the racket face as it comes through the ball. This is a very good angle for observing Boris's continental grip. Notice with the backswing how he cocks his wrist and the racket remains vertical as he turns his shoulder. By doing this, it gives him extra power as he hits through the ball. It's also a good angle to observe the U-shaped swing pattern. There are two observations to be made with Petra's low backhand. Firstly, the front leg leading towards the ball, giving excellent balance. And secondly, observing the swing path, but especially the forward swing, where the racket face rises very sharply. Ivan shows us how to hit a high ball with a one-handed backhand. By coming from below the ball with a vertical racket face will impart topspin. As Ivan swings through very fast, the extra topspin will mean that the ball will come back into court. Thomas uses a wrist behind the racket grip and keeps excellent balance throughout the stroke. Notice with the follow through how the racket face rises very sharply, imparting topspin. Pete moves to the ball well and keeps excellent balance right through the stroke. This is a good angle for observing the forward follow-through. Notice how the racket face comes up through the ball and the head remains on the left-hand side of the hitting hand. We can observe what happens behind Stefan's back on this backhand. Notice the large shoulder turn and the high lifting of the racket head. Also note the use of the left hand in taking the racket into position. This angle shows three important features of Boris's backhand. Firstly, the large shoulder turn. Secondly, the cocked wrist and the racket rising very high behind his head. And thirdly, the use of the left hand. What a good shot to show Boris's power on his backhand. Notice the coordination of the step towards the ball,
The large shoulder turn and the very high racket head lift.
Ivan shows us one of his classical backhands. He leads out with the right foot and keeps excellent balance right throughout the stroke. He also shows us a classical U-shaped swing. Notice the high lift behind the back, and as he comes onto the ball, the very sharp lift with his forward swing pattern.